It is 50 years since Martin Luther King stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. and declared, "I have a dream." 50 years since those words became a part of history. The clarion call for a society based not on racism and segregation, but on equality and freedom and togetherness. His speech was destined to become a seminal moment in America's civil rights movement, one which would change the entire country for good. But half a century on, has his dream been realised? Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Miller travelled to Dr. King's hometown of Atlanta in Georgia, in the heart of the Deep South, to examine how far it has come.
They've been lifting the roof off of Big Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church since 20 years before the slaves were freed. Different races have their own ways of praising the Lord. You could call it self-segregation. But half a century ago, the manacles of official segregation were still crippling America.
Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time.
But 5 decades after this illustrious son of Atlanta shared his great dream of hope, his hometown remains mired by apartness and racial unfairness, sweltering in the heat of injustice.
Nothing has changed in 50 years, nothing.
People are still being unjustly treated based on race.
The dream, we still have a long way to go.
The gulf between rich and poor in Atlanta is wider than in any other big American city, and wide as it ever was. Martin Luther King's hometown is still a place where on one straight road in 5 short minutes you can drive from midtown through downtown to out of town, from rich to poor, from white to black. Atlanta has a black majority. It languishes at the bottom of the heap when it comes to prospects for upward mobility. Some things have improved for African Americans, but across the US, the racial unemployment ratio's unchanged since 1963. Whites are, on average, 6 times richer, blacks 6 times more likely to end up in jail.
Oh, how you doing?
There might be a black man in the White House, but America has not entered the post-racial era.
Hi.
One of Martin Luther King Jr.'s former lieutenants set up this project decades ago, but more attend Feed the Hungry Day now than ever. Worse, since recession kicked in. And you've got a family of how many?
I got a family of 10.
Family of 10 people. Cassandra's just 39. She had a stroke last year. Life's tough, she says.
I came here today to get what they were giving out, because they give out things that I need for the house.
Struggling families come to harvest donations that will help them through a while longer. Dr. King's dream, more like a fantasy here.
These are the people who he advocated for. This is why he started, his dream. This is his dream was that, yes, that we will all come together and hold
But the
hands.
fact that they're here suggests that the dream has not been realized.
Well, the fact that they're here suggests that the dream, we still have a long way to go.
We're doing pork butts, we're doing beef brisket, we're doing ribs, we're doing chicken, we're doing hot dogs.
Across town, another charity event. It's the annual Pigs and Peaches Barbecue Fest in a lily-white northern suburb.
Roasted corn. Freshly roasted corn.
Sizzling on summer Sundays is a big southern thing. Atlanta is famed for its Barbies, and a bit else. What's Atlanta famous for?
Coca-Cola.
The aquarium.
The aquarium.
Yeah. We have a zoo.
And a famous zoo because you've got pandas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Martin Luther King?
Yeah.
We almost forgot Martin Luther King. It's interesting, though. These white teenagers really do seem to be colorblind. Modern America, to them, one big meritocracy.
To me, discrimination doesn't matter. Like, if you work hard enough and you get the grades and you study your butt off, you can do anything that you want to. That's pretty much how America should be, and I believe that it is like that. Wow.
So, in a way, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream, which talked about people being judged on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin, is actually working?
Yeah.
It's all about what you do.
There's a smattering of African Americans at Pigs and Peaches, but this couple stood out from the crowd. And do you think people are colorblind?
Wow. When it comes to dogs, maybe. Between each other, no, they're not colorblind. Individuals are not colorblind at all.
And when times are tough, the color contrast thing sharpens.
If I was to apply for a job, and if an African American comes along and takes the same test for that same position, he's going to get the job, even though he might have had a lower test grade than I did, because it will be considered discrimination.
And they sentence me to life in prison.
But few have suffered what Dr. King called the chains of discrimination as keenly as Calvin C. Johnson.
I said, I'm innocent. I didn't rape anybody.
A college graduate whose dreams were crushed when an all-white jury convicted him of a rape he did not commit. He spent 16.5 years behind bars before finally being exonerated. Can I ask if the police officers were white?
Yes, they were white. The judge was white. The jury was white. Victim was white. It was pretty much painted white. And you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but it's just the opposite. You're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent, and that's an uphill battle.
If you're black.
If you're black.
Do you think the criminal justice system is weighted against African Americans?
It's definitely weighted against African Americans. People are still being unjustly treated based on race, even in 2013.
Calvin C. Johnson never got one apology. He had to fight for compensation. Remarkably, he's not bitter. He continues to draw strength from Dr. King's fight for justice. Today, the soaring oratory of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech gives Americans, black and white, the warm buzz of aspirations being realized. But there are many African Americans right here in the city of his birth who think that Martin Luther King did not go far enough. They offer the heretical view that Martin Luther King, and for that matter Barack Obama, are nothing but a salve for the conscience of white America.
We still have areas in Atlanta, from neighborhoods to counties, that are forcibly segregated.
Yanga Nkrumah is just such an apostate. He heads the Atlanta chapter of the new Black Panther movement.
Right on.
Branded a black racist hate group by other civil rights organizations. So for you, this war is not over?
Far from over.
Yanga grew up in a Black Panther household in the 70s.
Dr. King is America's Negro token for look how far we have come. That's what he is. Dr. King, Auburn Avenue, and all of this right here, for all its beauty and all its splendor and all his wonderful words, Dr. King is simply a tourist attraction. Will always be, it's like Atlanta. Everyone says, oh, Atlanta's this black city, and Atlanta is black operated, white owned. We want the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without willful hindrance. And we know that we are being willfully hindered.
The barriers to African American progress in this land of opportunity, even here in Martin Luther King's birthplace, are still very real, which is why his message still feels so alive. There is indignation, there is anger. But Dr. King himself was an optimist. The arc of the moral universe is long, he once said, but it bends towards justice. Jonathan Miller, Channel 4 News, Atlanta.